Alright, I want to give my bit on why I buy Mac. I first want to state that I know that this has been requested of me for quite a long time. I've never gotten around to doing it. I know that I've answered some of the PMs and emails questions that have been posed to me that are related to this subject throughout other videos, but I've never really come out and just made a direct, specific video about why do I purchase Macs. I also want to state and premise this video in that I buy a lot more than just Macs. I have several Windows machines, I have to support a few Linux clients, and I really buy what suits me and benefits me at the time, depending on which design, course of action any specific technology company takes in regards to whether it's hardware or software. Nonetheless, I do feel, hey, why do I purchase Macs? That's a valid question. I first want to say that it is ironic that Apples and Macs were the very first computers I used, and I was a die-hard user early on. I pretty much left being a die-hard user to almost not using them at all for a period of time when Windows NT came out. I was in awe of where Microsoft was going within Windows NT. They had OpenGL support, they were supporting RISC at one time, they were making very scalable professional operating system within the NT side of things that I really just admired. Of course, all that changed when NT was brought into the retail lines, and much of the problems that plagued from then on, while I was in awe, got burnt out on Microsoft. So I could say that Apple and Macintosh were my first computers of use, then I went to Microsoft, and then really what drove me to reacquiring Macs, I should say, as becoming really the systems that I use for my own personal use. Because flat out, most of my business clients are all Microsoft. I have a few Linux, like I've stated before, and fewer Apple clients. That said, Windows is bringing in the bread and butter. There are many times that I get frustrated with that, but I would say that of late, I think Microsoft has been doing a lot of good things, and I'll come back to that. So one of the things that drove me back to, of course, using OS X or buying a Mac was all of the problems and the burning out on Microsoft that I experienced. I went from being a hardware technician to an MCSE to a software programmer. A lot of that I lived through the pains and the mistakes and the security breaches that many IT guys have experienced in the use of Microsoft products. But I did not go back to Macs until OS X came around. I dabbled with Cheetah, with Puma, with Jaguar, but Cheetah and Puma had quite a few issues, and pretty much it was still a world of bringing classic or OS 9 apps over to get OS X application rich. But I loved and I knew the history of where OS X had come, and that was what I was more impressed with. It was kind of the same feelings that I had with Windows NT. With my own personal computers, I had several crashes with Windows 2000, one of my most hated Windows versions, and I could say personally I have maintained using Windows NT 4 for quite a long time, until I think it was 2003. I can say though that NT 4 was such a solid system that I still have a few clients that are running on the servers that I built for them, and the software that's running on there. I don't ever get phone calls for support or anything. I mean, it was that solid of a system. Now, there are the modern day Windows server systems that are in use today, and a lot of them are now solid, I would say. Server 2008 is seemed to be very impressive. 2003, we do have to take it down quite a few times for updates, so on and so forth. But it's remained pretty, I would say, fairly solid. I'm also, like if I haven't stated it before, very impressed with Windows 7. And I can honestly say that I haven't experienced personally any crashes or any of the issues and the magnitude that I had with XP and prior with Vista and Windows 7. From the embarkation of Vista, while it had many driver problems and application support issues, they did get solved. But it wasn't any of the headaches that I had from the previous Windows versions. And with Windows 7, I've upgraded several machines without a hitch. I can't honestly say that for an upgrade from Snow Leopard. So that gives kudos to Microsoft on those fronts. But nonetheless, OS X is my preferred operating system for my own personal use. Now, I could go into more of the technicalities of why I like OS X over Windows, but I do have many videos already stipulating that. There are many regards where the performance of OS X is simply evident. But again, you always have users coming back and forth, and the battle always goes on between Mac versus PC, predominantly because you have much more scalable hardware, of course, on the PC side, and there's so many variables of what applications do we use. And just testing hardware, especially now, with the transition of Macs embracing Intel, whether Apple fans like it or not, the internals of the hardware is the same architecture. It doesn't really matter if you have a logic board going into a motherboard and using fully buffered DIMMs. Heck, all that's really, fully buffered DIMMs is designed by Intel. EFI is designed by Intel. So there is no design, or there's no real gain in that actual hardware. It's still going to have the same chipset bottlenecks as any other Intel machine. The end result, without getting too off the beaten path here, is that the internal computing power is on the same playing field now. And I know a lot of Apple users try to differentiate and say no, 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 no. There's no escaping it, whether we like it or not. So we rely on, which of course is the bread and butter of everything, the software, OS X. Now, I don't want to negate the hardware of Macs in terms of the design they put in. Many people don't care about that, though. I know there's a lot of people who say, look, I just want a box, that's it, it's cheap, I'm done. And look, I can get 6 cores and 30 gigs of RAM for this amount of price, and look, and whoop-de-doo, and maybe put some neon lights on it or something. Fine, that's cool. And I can appreciate that. I have a gaming rig. I build many custom rigs. I have videos showing overclocking and the building of my custom rigs. But I do also appreciate, especially the older lines of the Power Macs, with the design that they put into them. Many of you may not give them credit for that, but heck, you know, when I was a technician, I felt it very nice to be able to open up the old Power Mac G4s and motherboard was right there versus the slide out or removable motherboard trays. I thought that was just genius. I loved the cooling duct, the G5 Plexi. It was like a little acrylic panel that forced basically air circulation through the chips, which I thought was great. And it kept a lot of the other machine parts isolated and things like that. Of course, many case manufacturers, we see that today as well. And a few years back, like with Lian Li and Silverstone. Silverstone is one of my favorite custom build PC cases, and Lian Li is also very good. But there is a lot of quality and attention to detail that does go into Macs. And that may not be worth it to a lot of people. And they don't want to go and buy it. Okay, that's cool. I do appreciate it, and while I do have custom build rigs, the reason why I do custom build is because pretty much over most OEMs, I trust myself over them. But Apple has been very reliable through the years, to the point where they have earned my trust. I feel confident in using Apple computers, Apple's hardware. They have one of the best customer service I've ever experienced. I will also say that early on, when I owned a Dell at my old company, Dell used to be really good, and then they kind of went off. And now that I've seen that they've gone back to the standards that I was used to many years back, but there was a period of time that it was just flat out. I couldn't stand it. But still, nonetheless, I would really put Apple as one of the top customer service companies out there. I like the ease of use of OS X. I like how it's organized and structured. I prefer a dock over a start menu. I like how applications are handled versus Windows. I love how the system handles application dump and crashes, sandboxing in general. I like its security model, and many other things, not to make the video too long. Now, I know a lot of the Windows guys are out there, oh, come on, and this and that. Well, I can also give, like I said, I am very impressed with Windows 7. But we have to be honest as well that it's taken a while for Microsoft to get to at least to a system that I really feel confident in. And I have a whole video on Windows 7 features to go over on that. But I also want to end the video in that if there is a day, because I am not a person who sticks to brand because of brand. If the technology changes and the software turns to crud, or the hardware turns to crud, or goes in a direction that I am particularly not in favor of or does not benefit me, I will change. So always keep that in mind. And I think that's probably the best advice to give anybody. Because in the end, when someone asks me why I buy a Mac, they're asking my opinion on why I bought a Mac versus anything else. And for now, you know what I know. But I would say the best consumer options are always to keep your options open and ride the waves of technology and see where it takes you and see how it benefits you. And never, for the sake of brand, hold yourself back. Thanks for watching.